Hey, welcome to another episode of Not Scrum Done podcast, where we help educate you on Scrum and Agile things. In this episode, we'll be exploring the debate that we've seen so much online, which is the Scrum Master certification worth it or not worth it? So, we're going to talk about that, what people are saying for the positive, what people are saying for the negative, and give you our opinion, and that way you can form your own opinion. I am Andriana Marshall, professional Scrum trainer at scrum.org, and that is.
I am Grand Scrum Master Scott. Good evening, everyone. Good day, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
Yeah. Another thing I want to add to this agenda is we're going to talk about the actual purpose of the certification, because I think that may also be very misunderstood based on what we're seeing in other videos and content and people that we work with and what they say about it. So, with that being said, let's get started.
All right. Adriana, why don't you kick us off? Was it worth it at the end of the day for you to get any type of certification or anyone that you want to call out?
Yeah, so we talked about this in our video last week, where we talked about how, or a couple weeks ago, when we talked about um, how we got started in Scrum. And the typical and traditional way is actually learning Scrum, whether that be training. I was fortunate to have someone actually come into the office and train us, and it was great because it got our whole team on the same page of an understanding of Scrum. And that's how I started. Then I ended up later getting my Scrum Master certification. I personally think it was worth it at the end of the day, um, because that gave me a boost of understanding. It doesn't tell you everything. You're not going to learn everything in 2 days, but it gave me a good understanding. So I'll start with that, and then we'll talk. We'll go more in depth, and I'll give you some more examples. What
Awesome.
about you, Scott?
Was it worth it at the end of the day? I was definitely says yeah. I would say yes. Kind of what you alluded to earlier. I started out self study, just reading some books, and really just doing some self study. And then I began to see some job descriptions that, hey, a lot of jobs was looking for, at the time, CSM certification was another certification or some certifying body. So I said, hey, well, back then I didn't know what I know now. So let's think about the question: was it worth it? Which we now in the future looking back, but when we was in the present time, I had to make a decision of, I think this will be helpful for me because my self study, I don't think is going to, get me in front of somebody to have that face to face conversation. So I made a decision to go get certification. And in hindsight, I'm so glad that I did because, as you identified, it bridged a few gaps in terms of what I thought I knew and what I actually knew. And if it didn't do that, it expanded my brain, my perspective to look at things in a different way, in a broader way versus just my narrow thinking. So, what is the debate all about here? Maybe what are we talking about? What's the fuss? What are we talking about here?
So I think largely the debate is really around the perceived value that people have of the benefits of the Scrum certification. There is obviously, we talked about this, a lot of conversation about it being low value or no value. I think sometimes when everyone's going right, the people that say go left get a ton of attention because they seem contrary, like contrarious. They're so different. They're not following the grain and so forth. But at the end of the day, even in some of these people that say you don't need a certification, they still tell people to get a certification. So it's really hilarious and ironic. But on one end, you have the advocates of the Scrum Master certification that argue it provides a level of standardization, right? So we know, and that's one of the benefits that I believe it has, like knowledge and understanding is going to be across the board, right? At least at scrum.org, we can't speak for every single trainer outside of that, but we do know at scrum.org there is a base level knowledge and understanding that within all of our courses. And it can also help demonstrate a level of commitment to the framework and potentially lead to increased job opportunities or higher pay. And notice that I said potentially, not that it automatically does that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But on the flip side, some of the other people believe that it has low value because, it's growing in popularity, that it doesn't give you experience and skills. There are also concerns that some are too focused on the theory and maybe not giving enough practical experience. And so, Scott, I know that you had a friend who absolutely hates the certification. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, indeed. I'll be more than happy to tell you about that. My first product owner, his name was Kyle. Kyle. That was my first job as a Scrum Master working for somebody else. And I met this gentleman by the name of Kyle. And I respected Cal. He was a product owner. I respect him very much. So, of course, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm gonna go ask my peers, hey, I'm thinking about taking this class. Hey, I'm thinking about taking that class. And Andriana, why did I do that? Because that opened up Pandora's box. He's like, what you gonna do that for? I was like, Cal, should I not get the certification or what? No, I don't believe in certification at the time. Kyle might have changed like we all do as we grow older. Our perspective changed. But at this time, Cal did not believe in certification. So I inquired, Cal, why shouldn't I go get this certification? I just don't believe in certification. Why? He said, because I think they're a ripoff. They're a scam. It's all about the money. People come out of there, they don't know no more than what they did when they went and blah, blah, blah. He just went on and on and on. And he was very valid in a lot of things he was saying because I didn't like what he was saying. But after I finished talking to Kyle, I will go look at other Scrum Masters and other product owners and developers in the environment and reflect on what he said. And I would see that they're very Scrum dumb. Now, Kyle, let me give you some background on Kyle. Kyle was a former Scrum Master. He has no certification. He's not certified anything. Remember, I said he didn't believe in it at that time. Now, but Kyle has put his dues in. I can see Kyle. What does Kyle Day look like as a product owner? I see him reading books all the time. I see him reading something. Kyle is very versed. Hey, Kyle, what books are you reading? Oh, I'm reading this book. Oh, Scott, you should read this book. That was Kyle Hotspot. Kyle, what book are you reading? Oh, Scott, I recommend you read this book. I recommend you do this. You see, he's learning. He's teaching himself what he needs to know. Now, remember, I said Kyle been in the game over 5 years when we met. So, looking at it from Kyle's perspective, I can kind of see see his perspective from the standpoint of, hey, I'm already in the game. Remember, we also did a video on do you have to be technical to be in this space? No. Kyle was already in the space, but he's also very technical. He's self-taught, no formal education in regards of that specifically. So that was Kyle's take, and yeah, um, yeah, Kyle just absolutely would not do certifications. Does that help, Mangiana?
So the interesting thing I thought you said in that you said a lot of interesting things, but the most interesting thing that I got out of that, Kyle was actually a Scrum Master at one point, which I have met Scrum Masters that do not have certifications, very intelligent, very knowledgeable, but they do read a lot as well. They do get an education from somewhere. We ourselves, we read a lot, we study a lot. We talked about that, I believe, in the last video, in the previous video. Go check out our other videos where we talk about how you can grow and learn and continue. The journey doesn't stop at a 2-day training or any training or reading the Scrum Guide. That's literally where it starts. The other thing is, now we talked a little bit about people wanting to land a job. We've both seen a lot of job descriptions. You've probably seen a lot more than I have as of late. So tell me about your experience on actually like job hunting and what you've seen.
Yeah, it's still the same. I mean, I will go back to 5 years ago when I was making that transition to get into the space. I looked at a lot of job descriptions and also remember, I also said that, every job description that I looked at that I felt like it was something that I wanted to apply to was looking for at least a certification. That was 5 years ago. Let's fast forward to today. Yes, I'm still looking for jobs now. I'm looking for companies that I want to work with now. I'm looking at Indeed. I'm looking at LinkedIn. Some of my friends turned me on to dice.com. So those are three resources that I'm looking at job descriptions today. And what's the common denominator? It's the same. Mostly every job description I look at is looking for now a CSM and a PSM, which we represent professional Scrum Master, professional side of things. That's scrum.org. And yeah, so if you don't have that, I wonder because you got to think about job descriptions now. I mean, if you can't get past the bots, if you don't have those minimum requirements of what the recruiter is looking for, how are you going to get to the point where you actually get an interview? So for me, I just think, hey, that's going to put me in a better situation to actually get in front of somebody and talk to them so that I can sell myself. So for me, I was happy to pay whatever the certification fee was to get the knowledge to set myself up for the greatest success. I thought the potential to actually get an interview because that was the goal. That was part of the mix of what I was thinking about in getting the certification in the first place. Anything to add to that?
Well, I think this is like the chicken and the egg. You need experience, but you also need a certification. But it's better to have experience and a certification, but they're still asking for both. So it's like, which one do you get first? It's a lot easier once you already have a job and experience to go and get the certification. That's very similar to what I did. I already had the Scrum Master job.
All right. Adriana, what is the purpose and intent of training and certification?
Yeah, so let's start with what's already here basically on the screen, which is the purpose is to provide knowledge and skills to apply Scrum effectively. The intent is to establish a common language of understanding. We're working to standardize so that we don't have these 1,500 awkward variations. Usually now people are starting to get to the point where if it's not Scrum, they're calling it something else, which is helpful. Calling it Scrum and missing elements and it's just really unhelpful. So we're looking to standardize so that people are actually, when they say they're practicing Scrum, they are actually practicing Scrum and not some other random thing. Commitment to demonstrate a commitment to Scrum. And then the benefits is to help individuals apply Scrum effectively and facilitate collaboration. So the purpose and intent of the Scrum Master training and certification is to provide individuals with the necessary skills and knowledge to effectively apply the Scrum framework in their organizations. This includes understanding the underlying principles and values of Scrum, as well as roles and events and artifacts within Scrum. So the real intent is to actually train you in Scrum.
Oh, no, those are great points, Adriana. The other thing I will add to that, I mean, from the benefits category, just to highlight that, remember I said, before I went to the training, I was just stuck in my interpretation of reading all the books and the Scrum guide, even myself. I was limited to my own interpretation of that. So now that I'm in a certification just as an added benefit, now I can tap into, let's say, Adriana, your perspective on it. And when I hear that, and I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't think about that. Okay, great. And that was just great to have that kind of experience. And also, I would say, it gives you an opportunity just to network with other people. You tap into the collective intelligence of the room. You get to network with other people, and you never know how those relationships can pan out to you in your future life and also in your career.
Yeah, that's a great point. I ended up working with someone that I went to my first Scrum Master training with. Completely different state. We ended up working together at Nike. Yeah, I moved, I reached out to her and we stayed connected through the years. And so we met up for drinks and started hanging out a little bit more when I lived out there. She still lives out there. I moved back. But yeah, I mean, networking is not talked about enough. And it is the most important thing because most jobs are filled by referrals still to this day.
All right, let's move on to our next slide. Why do people say you do not get value?
Yeah, so some of the things that I personally have heard is it won't land you the job, which it's not supposed to, or you need your resume updated. Listen, a 2-day training is literally focused on what we just mentioned. That's why we preface that to give you a little bit of understanding of like, this is what its purpose is. When you start making up a new purpose, you're going to be disappointed. One thing is not going to land you the job. It actually takes a lot of other things. It may require the 2-day training. You may have to get a certification. Okay. It may say you need some level of experience, which I know is a little bit of a challenge because like you want to get the job, but you may not have the experience, or you have the experience and you may be missing a certification. You have to put all the things together, right? You need an updated resume. You need, maybe interview prep, and you need experience, right? I mean, all of these are very different things, and you can have a coach for every single individual thing. There are people that just focus on resume writing, people that just focus on helping you actually gain skills. There are people out there that really just want to say, hey, don't do this, come and like, let me coach you on all the things. It's like the difference of going to, like, let's say a restaurant that serves everything. They serve Italian, they serve American, they serve steak, versus going to a steakhouse. If you go to a steakhouse, so somebody who's dedicated to training or someone who's dedicated to resume writing, it's going to be top notch. steakhouses in LA are going to charge you $75 to $200 for a steak versus a chain restaurant, you're going to pay $20 for a steak, and the quality is very different. So you got to think about that as well, not just saying like you absolutely need to take this training because we're professional Scrum trainers. There are we'll talk about some other ways that you can learn Scrum as well, without necessarily having to spend $2,000 on like an agile coach. So that's one of the things they say. It doesn't do resume writing and all these other things. They talk about not enough real world experience. You're talking to trainers that actually have real world experience, at least via scrum.org. They vet us, even Scrum Alliance, they vet everyone. They make sure that you have experience and so forth. A lot of people are actually doing this in conjunction with working as a Scrum Master or working as a consultant for companies. So they have a ton of experience and they're still working on the same problems that you're going through right now. And I think people are just looking for a quick fix. I think they'll go to a 2-day training, it's magically over. You have to put in a lot of work, like I mentioned, to land a job. Anything else to add, Scott?
Oh, you said a lot of beautiful things there. One of the kind of the things that rallied in my brain as you was talking was practical experience versus certifications. Yeah, the skeptics argue that, hey, that practical experiences is you won't get that from a class. Can you kind of give a highlight of what our classroom experience is about in terms of the practical experience versus the certification? Because that is a debate, that is an argument, and I can see how people would have that valid argument. Do we have any practical experience opportunities in our classes?
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. I'm not talking at you for 2 days. Like we're actually doing hands-on exercise that things that actually happened in the real world and relating them. And then you have the opportunity to ask questions about your specific situation and give you answers. And then we build a relationship. So everybody that has gone to my class, they have an opportunity to connect with me via LinkedIn, join our Discord, join Facebook and so forth. And we both give free one-on-ones after. So it's like, okay, you do the 2-day training. Some people I have legitimately helped them update their resume in our free one-on-one call. And some of them have actually landed jobs based on my recommendations for that. So, and they've never had experience before. One of the things that some people say is like, some of these people, they've been out of the game so long, they don't know what it's like to start. You're literally restarting. I'm not that old to where I've lost my memory. So I can easily help someone actually get a job. It's once you've dealt with somebody I've worked at major companies, Amazon, Nike, and several startups. So yeah, you're getting practical throughout. We're taking real world situations that we've been through and we are putting you through those exercises, and then we debrief and talk about them.
Oh, very well said. Practical experience versus the certification. So you can look forward to any scrum.org classes that you're going to get practical experience. And then the other, let's say sub debate in terms of why somebody would ask that question. Why do people say you don't get value out of it? Would be around the theory versus practical application. Of course, we got to teach you the theory in the classroom. That's the foundation of why you're doing anything. And, we got to teach you that. But then, shortly after that, immediately when we're done, well, actually, while we teach you theory, you actually practicing what you actually learning. So, and that's just the way we approach learning. We believe that, hey, you learn best. We all learn best by actually doing. So as we teach you some theory and principles, we're going to let you play with those things. And, we're just going to debrief and keep building upon that. It's like we build in a house over the course of 2 days in our classes. Then the other one is theory and practical application, which I just talked about there. But yeah, I think that's it on that particular slide there. Nothing else to add from me. Wonderful job. Now, this slide is about when do you actually get value? You kind of touched on that a little bit in the previous slide in terms of, hey, getting the certification and you thinking that's it, there's nothing else to do. And you gave a whole slew of things that, you probably might want to think about doing to get to the outcome that we all desire. Anything else to add from this slide to what you've already said, Andriana?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is understanding this is a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
The first step is learning, and there are multiple ways to do that. So I know we've talked a lot about the certification. I've told people you don't really need a certification right now. Don't worry about that. Here's some other things that you can do, and then you can figure it out. We can talk about the certification later, right? There are people who are told, okay, the second one may not be for you. Focus on X, Y, and Z. So I don't want to seem like we're just pushing everyone to like a 2-day training, but at the end of the day, you need to learn and you need to get experience. So that is the first step. You have that mindset, it's really going to help. We've talked about applying principles in real world situations, continuing to learn and improve skills. Again, this is a marathon. Networking is something that's rarely talked about, but it's super crucial to the success of your career. It is very hard to not have allies and friends at other companies that can refer you, because somebody's referring someone else.
Yes.
I've worked at companies, they're like, oh, we're hiring someone. There are generally several referrals. So cold email, cold applying is harder. It's harder to get the job.
I like all that. I'm going to add to some of the things you said. Join meetups. I mean, if you're in an organization, maybe they have Toastmasters, or maybe they have something that, for you to up your skills. Remember, as a Scrum Master, we have soft skills. So we're pretty sure that all of our soft skills need to be improved. So how are you going to improve those soft skills? Seek feedback. Do you seek feedback from your team? Do you seek feedback from your peers, other Scrum Master, Agile coaches, project managers, or whatever that looks like in your environment? Are you seeking feedback from them so that you can improve your skills? Again, you don't necessarily need to go to class for that, but you do need to take that feedback and figure out, how are you going to improve in areas that you need to improve, so that you can take your team to where it is that you're trying to get them to see it, and get to that outcome that we all trying to be. Now, network. Andrana and I can't stress that enough. Because through taking some of these certification classes, I still have mentors in my life today that I've actually met in a class from years ago. Most of the jobs I get now comes from, as Andriana said, for her own purposes, I get that from a friend. Somebody calls, say, hey, Scott, hey, we got a Scrum Master open job here. Would you be interested? Well, I got a lot on my plate right now. And then when you get that introduction from somebody who's already working in the company, that, then yes, in that case, you don't necessarily need the certification, because, that person's word is, pretty much vouching for you, if you didn't have the certification at that point. But again, if I hadn't went to that certification class, I wouldn't met these individuals that I'm still communicating with. And, because once you get into this space, it is a very small, close-knit community. We love helping each other out. Hey, if I know something that can help somebody out, hey, give me a call. Oh, I know this place is looking, that place is looking. But again, I'm not going to refer you if you look like you don't have the credentials, or I don't know you. So I'm certainly not going to put my name on that.
A referral weighs a lot heavier. If I were to say, hey, I worked with this product owner, he's really personable, he understands, he dives deep into the product and all these other positive things about him, they're going to go with him over another candidate.
Absolutely. What do you do when you're just starting out or trying to make a career change? I want to give something for those of you who might be in transition, or just your first video you ever heard about Scrum, or don't know where to start. So I want to give you some things to think about there. Andriana.
First thing you do, start with a Scrum guide. Understand what accountability that you want to be. If it's Scrum Master, product owner, or developer, it would be very interesting to get a Scrum Master certification as a developer. I wouldn't necessarily say it's required. It's not asked on many job descriptions. They may want you to have experience working on a Scrum team. So it might actually be a really great boost if you plan on being a developer. Product owner, again, there are actual product owner certifications that you can take instead of a Scrum Master certification. And Scrum Master, as Scott already said, you pretty much need to have one, but this is if you're trying to figure out, like, should I transition? Then, start with a Scrum guide, understand if you actually want to do that. Maybe you want to look at a mini course or something along those lines. Just make sure it's from somebody that actually has Scrum Master experience and several certifications. Check out their LinkedIn. Make sure that you understand that they actually have the experience that they claim to have. Obviously, we work at scrum.org, so we've been through a rigorous process. So we're not some random people off the street, and our LinkedIns are in the description. So feel free, click, and you can actually see, and you can talk to people that have worked with us and be like, is Adriana a good Scrum Master? So, and then also, if you do need that hands-on experience because you are brand new, check out one of our courses or any course at scrum.org. But our courses are a link to our courses are in the description, so you can check that out. Understand again, it is a marathon. Scott, do you have anything to add to that?
But yeah, everything you said, plus you did say read the Scrum guide. Say, hey, fine. You know, if you're still unsure about Scrum is right or not right for you, still unsure about certification or not certification, ultimately, all day at the end of the day is what you are telling yourself. Do I need a certification? If the answer is no, great. If I need a certification, go out and find the right things for you to do. But before you do that, I would recommend maybe, you know, if you're still not quite sure you want to, pay, thousands of dollars for a certification class, maybe you try implementing the Scrum Guide in your personal life. Find something in your personal life that you can track and just go through the steps of the Scrum Guide. That's what I did when I started, when I was teaching myself self-study before I even went to the class. Um, maybe research some other frameworks and methodologies that could figure out. I'm asking the question of how can I make my life better? How can I make my life simpler? How can I get more organized? How can I, get stuff done? Maybe you look at something like plan, do, check, act. When I read the Scrum Guide for the first time, it reminded me of Dr. Deming's work. It's an approach to how we do work. It's an approach. Scrum Guide is just another approach. So it reminds me very much of the framework we have on the screen. Okay, you're going to plan to get a certification or not. You have a hypothesis. I need a certification or I don't. Well, before you go do that, why don't you try to track something in your personal life? Maybe you start off by reading a book. Okay, you read that book, and can you implement anything from that book in your personal life and go through the Scrum events? Maybe, maybe not. And then once you get done with that, you check. This is the check phase of that. Then you act. You let that dictate. Okay, cool. I didn't learn enough out of this book. I don't have enough friends around me. This is me going through, taking you through my journey slightly. Remember, I was doing self study, but I got to a point like, do I have the right understanding of the stuff? I really want to understand the stuff. So let me go take a class. Also, along with most of the job descriptions had that on there anyway. So it was kind of twofold. I wanted to take my learning to the next level. I did self-study first, and then I went to get the certification. So if that works for you, again, that's a way to validate your hypothesis. I need a certification. I don't need a certification. Ultimately, you decide that. That's totally your choice and what you think you need. And nobody's going to argue with that. Kyle is very successful. Andriana is very successful. Scott is very successful. We all had different paths to get to our destination.
Yeah, and I would add that I will add a link in the description to books that we recommend.
Yeah.
So if you read the Scrum Guide, maybe a good book after that and you want to be a Scrum Master is Mastering Professional Scrum. I think that book is actually good for anyone.
Yeah.
I feel like it's one of like the best ones for a Scrum Master, but again, it's great for anyone who actually is working on the Scrum team. The other thing that I would add is we talked about different journeys. Did Kyle never get a certification?
At the time I left the company, he did not get a certification. I don't know about now. So yeah. I'm actually prompted to call him now. I'm curious.
So Kyle never got a certification. Scott, you got your certification pretty much up front.
Mm-hmm.
I got the job and then got my certification. So there are different paths to this. It just ultimately, it is a requirement now, which back in a few years ago, I didn't see it on every single job. They just wanted to know that you actually had the understanding. It wasn't necessarily a full job requirement. So
well said. I love it.
if you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching. And that means that you have an attention span greater than a goldfish, and that makes you legendary. If you'd like to connect with us, the links in the description to our LinkedIn. We also have links to our classes that you can take, our Discord, and other ways that you can get connected with us. All right, be legendary.
Connect, be legendary.